All right, is everyone getting settled in? If you are, we are going to kick this off. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to the Q4 Lunch and Learn at Liquid Interactive. We're excited to have everyone here. I hope you brought your appetites for knowledge first and foremost, but the traditional appetite works as well. I mean, build your own burger bar, that sounds wonderfully filling. First and foremost, we have to do a little housekeeping before we get started. In front of you are surveys. So we ask at the end of this, after the open Q&A is over, that you give us your feedback. Whether you are praising this squad up here or you're skewering us or it's something in between, we value the feedback. It helps us a lot when we are continuing to create and evolve these lunch and learns, and your feedback is the reason we can hopefully kind of bring out a better product each time you come out. So with that being said, let's get started today. Right now, if you look around, marketing is currently being driven by content. Everywhere you look, every brand that you know and see is throwing content your way. There's content about products, there's content about services, there's stories that these brands tell, there's behind-the-scenes content. And as time progresses, that's only going to get more and more pronounced. And right now, video is the medium that is undoubtedly dominating all of the presentation of that content. Everywhere you look, you see video. So today what we're going to do is throw more speakers your way than we typically do at a Lunch and Learn. And we're going to cover video from creation through to distribution and analytics. So the team you're going to be hearing from today, first will be Victor June. Victor is one of Liquid's visual media designers, and he's going to walk you through creating video content. And he's going to call out a couple pieces of technology that are utilized throughout that process. He's also going to highlight several types of content and how those types can help you achieve certain business goals. Dolan Kutzman is Liquid's motion graphics artist, and he's going to highlight those specific techniques and why they become so prominent and how they can be so effective. Sean Thomas is one of Liquid's digital marketing strategists, and he's going to cover for you, after you create content, how do you organically distribute it so it can reach the most people possible from your website and within your social channels. And finally, I'm Jason Mastriani, a Liquid account executive, and I'm going to walk you through the how-to and why you should put money behind your content distribution so you can get it in front of really as many eyeballs as possible within the target audiences you defined. Now, before I turn it over to Victor, what I want you to do is I'm going to show 4 very, very important statistics. And I want you to keep all of these in mind as everyone is speaking today. Because what they do is they highlight the effectiveness of video as it relates to the people who are ultimately going to buy your products or services, which is the end user. 90% of users say that seeing a video about a product is helpful in the decision-making process. This is very simple math for everyone. That is 9 out of 10 people find video helpful when they're making a buying decision. 4 times as many consumers would rather watch a video about a product rather than read about it. So if you are just presenting facts about your products via text, you are not presenting that in the preferred way of end users. 70% of business-to-business marketers say video is the most effective medium for driving conversions. As marketers, we know conversions are an incredibly important metric, no matter how they're defined. They're typically that first step from a prospect and turning them into someone who you can have a more one-to-one interaction with. Video is what drives conversions. And finally, 96% of business-to-business companies use video in some capacity within their marketing or marketing campaigns. So if you're part of that 4%, that means you are officially behind. All your competition is doing it. So there's no other medium within marketing that can actually lay claim to that type of effectiveness. It's only video. So how do you start this process? Well, let's assume that there's a sound strategy in place that you can execute against. And if that's the case, it starts like any other process. It starts with creation. Victor?
So as Jason said, I'm going to be covering with you how exactly you create video content. More specifically, I'll be talking a little bit about 3 different video technologies that you can use to create modern video content, and what types of videos you can actually create using these technologies. But first, I want to share with you just 3 statistics that show how important video is becoming in the marketplace today. The first being that since 2014, video resolution and storage requirements have multiplied by a factor of 800%. And in 2015, U.S. consumers actually viewed 154.2 billion videos. Now, it's estimated that in 2017, video content will make up 74% of all internet traffic. So it's becoming extremely relevant with time. So to dive into the technologies, I'll preface this by saying that there's, of course, many different video technologies that we could cover. Many upcoming, such as 360-degree video, virtual reality video, and even HDR video. The ones that we're going to dive into are going to be 4K video, color grading, and actually drone video. So to get started, we'll go with 4K video. So what is 4K video? Essentially, it's video that is 4 times the quality of regular HD video. This is quickly becoming a new standard in the professional video marketplace. To further describe what I mean by 4 times the quality, I'll use this diagram. So as we can see, the image in the box in the center actually shows HD video being 1920 by 1080 resolution. 4K video is 4 times the size, so it's 3840 by 2160. And I'll also note that here at Liquid, we actually capture 4K video at even slightly higher resolution than 4K with a Blackmagic Ursa Mini, which is a camera that we just purchased in order to start diving into 4K video. And it actually captures video at 4680 by 2592. So what this means is that it doesn't have as much to do with being able to shoot like wider video or more narrow video. It's all about the fact that we can capture video that is such high quality to the point where you're packing 4 times as much quality, as much clarity, as much resolution into the same frame that HD video goes into. So it honestly just looks a lot better. But that's not the only benefit. I'm going to review a couple of production cost saving benefits from shooting with 4K. The first being that you can actually simultaneously capture multiple video angles with 4K. What I mean by this is you can set up and capture a wide shot, as you see on the left side here. And then in post-production, you can actually zoom in on that footage in order to create a close-up or a medium shot. Now, traditionally with HD video, you would have had to actually shoot these interviews with multiple different cameras in order to get your close-up and your wide shot, or you would have had to take the time to actually reset the camera several times in order to capture all of these different angles. You might be thinking, can't you just zoom in on HD video? But the fact is, if you've ever tried to zoom in on HD video, you'll find that very quickly the video gets extremely fuzzy and it's not at all clear. Whereas, as you can see from this diagram, when you zoom in on 4K video, it holds up. It still is extremely clear even after zooming in up to 250%. The next benefit of 4K is the fact that you can actually take still frames from your 4K video and repurpose them as digital photographs. You can obviously see where this repurposing would be extremely helpful in any medium, really, because, I mean, anywhere where you're putting video, it's oftentimes possible to also put photos there. Rather than having to capture them separately, you can capture them all through 4K. Here's an example of this. So a 4K still frame, as we mentioned, has a resolution of 3840 by 2160. A typical DSLR JPEG has a resolution of 4272 by 2848. So as you can see, there is a difference technically in quality, but it's negligible. So it's important to understand that you can repurpose 4K stills as photos. The next cost-saving benefit that I'd like to cover is the fact that there's unlimited post-production flexibility. What I mean by this is that when you shoot in 4K, in the edit room, you can actually create digital camera movements. An example of this is, as you can see in the top left and the bottom right here, you're actually able to capture a locked off wide shot where you're not moving the camera at all, which is very, very quick. If you've ever actually produced a video, it's a lot easier to do that rather than set up and physically move the camera during a shot. So by shooting it extremely wide like this in 4K and then bumping in on the footage, you can actually create sliding movements or zoom movements that you never actually did on the day of production. Here's an example from a recent project that we did. We shot this 4K locked off shot here, and what we were able to create with it is actually this very, very smooth sliding motion. So the next technology that I'd like to cover with you is actually color grading. So what color grading is it's a method of essentially getting optimal image quality out of footage. This is something that has typically been reserved for, Hollywood-style major motion pictures. And it's quickly becoming actually a standard in the professional video industry. The typical way of capturing video up to this point has been shooting video in what we call low dynamic range, where the video already looks very contrasty, has a good amount of saturation, and it looks pretty good. What we're actually able to do now with color grading is capture the video with high dynamic range, which means that we preserve the brightest and darkest spots of the image, as you can see in the top right corner there. It'll look extremely flat and milky and kind of washed out. But then we can take that footage, because all of those parts of the image are completely preserved, and color grade it and end up getting a much better final product, as you can see in the bottom right corner here. This is just another example from a recent project that we did, where we actually captured the footage very, very flat, and then you can see the extreme difference in what we were able to do then after color grading it. And here's just a pretty solid example of showing the difference between color graded versus non-color graded footage in motion. So you can see the image definitely comes alive by capturing and editing in this method. And a final advantage of color grading that I'd like to point out is the fact that in some cases you can actually repair archived footage for reuse. So what I mean by this is I'm sure that at many of the places where each of you work, the companies have created video projects in the past, and at this point that content might still be useful and might still be relevant, but the technical quality of the video may be very outdated. What you can do with color grading is essentially take that old video footage and spruce it up and make it much closer to what current professional standards are. This is obviously a huge cost-saving alternative to just completely reshooting whatever video you may be trying to reuse. A good example of this that we recently did was actually with a company called Allentech, where previously we had shot this several years ago, this industrial footage, and then we were able to actually repurpose this video by color grading it. You can see in the bottom right is the old footage, and then after color grading in the top left, you can see that it definitely looks a lot closer to what professional video should look like today. And the final key technology that I'd like to review is actually drone video. This is the most recent video technology for Liquid to adopt, and it's something that we've been pretty wowed by so far. Essentially what drone video is you take a drone and you attach a professional video camera to it, and then you fly it in such a way at high altitudes and ground level that you can capture really, really dynamic shots that have a lot of movement and life to them. Here are just a couple examples of the versatility of actually shooting with a drone. A lot of people may first think that it's meant for just large aerial views, but you can get an unlimited number of perspectives by capturing your footage with a drone, actually. You can see just a few of those examples here. All right, so those are three key technologies, but now what we're going to talk about is some of the types of video that can be created using a mix of these technologies. So there's, of course, an unlimited number of types of video that you can create that accomplish an unlimited number of tasks. But all videos should be meant to tell a story that either influences, instructs, or engages your audience. And here are just 3 examples of those types of videos. So the first one we're going to cover is testimonial video. Now, when you shop, or really when anyone shops, I think that the first place that most people go is actually to read reviews of previous customers. They want to see those success stories or those stories that weren't as successful when they use that product or service. What a testimonial is really a customer review in video format, and it's a great way to tell a story that creates a lot of rapport for your products and services. And here's just an example of one that we actually recently did for St. Francis Hospital. So it's just a small example of how just really sitting down a customer, having them tell their success story and capturing it in video format makes it extremely shareable and a really quick way to build rapport. The next type of video that I'd like to cover is actually product demos. So this is, of course, a way to visually describe your product's features or benefits. There's a huge advantage to describing these types of things through the format of video than a large text document. It's very concise and very engaging. An example that I'm going to show you is actually an example of a product demonstration that we made for Clutch Scholastic, which is a kids' toy and craft manufacturer. So as you can see, it's just a very simple way to essentially show off your product and get that information out there in a very shareable way. The final type of video that I'd like to actually cover with is a little bit more broad. It's really any type of internal communication. A recent project that we actually did was for Johnson & Johnson. They updated their paternity leave policy. And rather than just sending out a memo, they actually had us sit down with a family that was affected by this policy and more or less tell their story. And you'll be able to see the advantage of it over a memo. So with that, I'll now hand it off to Dolan to explain a different type of storytelling format, which is motion graphics.
So I'm going to be giving you a broad overview of what motion graphics is, why it's important, and how it can effectively be utilized. So motion graphics is essentially graphic design in motion. More specifically, though, it's the creative integration of static design elements such as illustration, photography, and typography with time-based media, which is audio, traditional video, and animation. Now, the primary function of graphic design is to visually communicate a message in a creative and interesting way. Motion graphics simply enhances and emphasizes this message with an intensity that can really only be achieved through motion. And this is simply because motion graphics has the unique ability to appeal to the user's main sensory inputs, which is audible and visual. Now, the marriage of these two inputs drastically increases information retention and comprehension, making motion graphics the perfect choice for brands looking to tell stories. So I'm going to give you 3 of the key significant benefits of using motion graphics and how to apply them. So first up is simplifying complex information. Motion graphics makes it possible to present a large amount of complex information in a package that is simple, easily consumable, and engaging. So, for example, an infographic does a great job at this. This is one that we made about Listen First marketing. It does an excellent job of taking all this complex data, simplifying it so that it's easier to consume. However, combining this with motion takes it to an entirely new level that not only engages the viewer, but makes it more enjoyable to consume. So I'm going to show you an example of how we took this infographic, transformed and repurposed it simply by adding motion and combining it with audio. Another really effective way to communicate your message is to do so through storytelling. Sometimes live action video isn't the most cost-effective or feasible way to tell your story, either due to a limited budget or simply because it can't be shot in real life. So that's where motion graphics can come in through the use of animation. The most common method that this is associated with is an animated explainer video. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's basically where a company will use simple cartoon-like characters to explain their product or service in a clear and concise way. So I'm going to show you an example of a recent animation we did for Olympus, where we utilized this method to help explain the benefits of their CO2 regulation unit.
Carbon dioxide, or CO2, decreases patient discomfort during and after a procedure. Conversely, room air as an insufflation gas leaves patients with uncomfortable abdominal pain and lasting distension. 20 years of studies have proven that CO2 absorbs quickly into the body, 150 times more quickly than nitrogen in standard room air, and is 25 times more soluble than room air by blood and tissue. Room air can leave patients feeling uncomfortable for up to 72 hours, while CO2 is absorbed by the colon and excreted through the lungs in just 30 to 60 minutes after a procedure.
So there are obviously many different ways to utilize storytelling through animation other than explainer videos. Character animation that involved a chase scene with a dinosaur, which for obvious reasons we can't capture in real life. So 2D animation made the most sense, and it was the most cost-effective solution for that specific project. So there's one more important benefit of motion graphics that I want to cover, and that is to enhance traditional video. And there are some basic ways to do this through the use of lower thirds, titles, transitions, things like that. But there's a more advanced and effective technique where we actually integrate the graphics into the video itself. And we do this through motion tracking, rotoscoping, and other various visual effect techniques. So I'm going to show you an example of a product that we recently completed for Precision Medical. And you're going to notice that the integrative graphics are crucial to the success of this video. And it provides a new level of engagement that can't truly be achieved by traditional video alone.
The Total Oxygen Concentrator offers the perfect balance of mobile and stationary oxygen delivery. The TOC delivers both continuous and pulse flow. Weighing under 10 pounds, the Easy Pulse TOC is completely portable. Plug into the DC outlet for extended use while on the road. Planning a trip? No problem. The unit fits under your airline seat and is FAA approved for in-flight use.
You can see, motion graphics is a very large and complex art form. It's blended and interlaced with many forms of digital media. The boundaries are constantly being pushed, and within this medium, the possibilities really are endless. So hopefully now you have a basic understanding of motion design, and you can begin thinking about the potential. Now, after all this is said and done, and all your content is created, if you don't have a plan in place to deliver that content to your audience, your creative efforts unfortunately may go unnoticed. So I'm going to let Sean and Jason explain in more detail how to effectively distribute your video content.
So distributing video content, ultimately you can have a great piece of content, but if you don't have a plan for that content, it may go completely unnoticed and completely unseen by your audience. So you have to start thinking about what platforms you're going to be using, placing your content on, and how you're going to utilize it on each of those platforms. So you're probably on most of these platforms with your business that you're associated with. All of these have their own benefits and detractions. YouTube is a very powerful one, but Facebook is coming up closely on behind. YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. It has very long-lasting effects and is closely tied to Google. So we see a lot of major benefits with using that. Your website is also very beneficial to use, with it being able to drive longer time on site and also being great content for people right on your home page can really resonate with people. Instagram is great for short little nuggets of content, something 15 seconds to a minute. LinkedIn is great for more educated content. But ultimately, with any of these platforms, you need to think about how you're going to host, embed, and share your content throughout your different platforms. So speaking of sharing, one important statistic I wanted to bring out was 92% of mobile video consumers share video with others. So this really shows how you need to be making your content shareable and placing it on the right platforms so that your content can be easily shared either on that platform or on other platforms as well. So if you don't know, hosting content is basically I'm uploading a video directly to Facebook. Embedding it is if, let's say, I took a YouTube video and embedded it on a website, or if, let's say, a new was interested in the content you created and they could embed it on their site. Sharing is if you are sharing it within a platform or potentially on another platform as well. And each of these different platforms have their own benefits and limitations with each of these. YouTube tends to be very broad with this, being able to easily host, share, and embed content. We often recommend to our clients to use YouTube as their video platform. And LinkedIn is a little bit of an odd duck where they actually prefer, they actively encourage other platforms to be shared on there. So YouTube videos are actively auto-played on LinkedIn. So often we recommend that you might as well just have a YouTube video on LinkedIn rather than uploading a video directly to LinkedIn. Now, all of these will help stretch your dollar and help get your audience and eyeballs on it as big as possible. But one way to stretch your dollar even further is with repurposing content. Now, you may have been to a lunch and learn that we had a few months ago, a couple lunch and learns ago, about repurposing content, but it is even more relevant today, especially with video, because your one video can be chopped up into multiple clips that can be used on multiple platforms and can really resonate with users for a long period of time and really get the most value out of every dollar that you spent on that video. And looking back to what Victor was calling out earlier, if you shot in 4K, you can use the stills on your multiple social platforms, or you can, if you have older content that's still has relevant content to your audience, you can upgrade it with color grading and make it relevant again in professional quality. But ultimately, one of the best type of content that you can be able to repurpose is live streaming. So one important statistic that Facebook released is that live streaming content is watched for 3 times longer than pre-recorded videos. So that really shows the power of live streaming content, because pre-recorded videos already are more powerful than photo content or text content that you'd see on Facebook. So saying that this is going to be 3 times more engaging or 3 times longer watched than a traditional video is really going to show how powerful live streaming is. So one thing you may have noticed is that Liquid, let me pull out my phone, is currently live streaming right now. If I can flip this over. That we're currently live streaming right now to, excuse me, to some of our audience here on Facebook, and receiving a good amount of engagement so far with the live stream as well. And ultimately, one quick note is that we are using the Mevo, which is a very cool 4K camera that is like a little production studio within it and is very powerful and goes with kind of the power that live streaming has been pushed on each of these platforms. Currently, on the different platforms that live streaming is integrated on, it is the most powerful and most engaging content you can possibly have. Live streaming, we've seen with, because we've shot for a number of our clients, we've seen usually for like if you post like a photo or text onto Facebook, you see about like you'll reach 1% of your audience. Whereas with live streaming, you're going to reach at least 30%, which is a huge jump and harkens back to the days of when Facebook used to not punish using organic content. And really, this just shows how powerful live streaming really is. But no matter how powerful it can be, you really need to be able to properly measure all of your content in order to see what content is really resonating with your users and what is not. So I love this quote. So what gets measured gets managed. If you aren't measuring your content, then you aren't truly managing your content. You're not truly seeing what's succeeding and how you can better future content. So knowing video analytics is very important for your video process, so that you can properly analyze everything that you've accomplished so far with your video efforts. Now, video analytics is a bit different from, like, let's say a Google Analytics for your website. A lot of the metrics are different, and how you need to analyze them are a bit different. So I'm going to go into some of the key metrics that you need to look at. So first off, video views. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's the oldest type of metric that you hear for videos, but it also isn't standardized at all. So a video view on Facebook is only if I watched, while I'm going through my newsfeed, if a video comes up and plays for 3 seconds and doesn't have any sound on, compared to a video view on YouTube, which is I clicked on that video, it is playing with sound on, and I have directly engaged and I'm listening to the video. That is considered a view. So on YouTube, a video view is a bit more valuable than on Facebook. So being able to know how valuable that view on each of your platforms is very important for analyzing how powerful your video is. So view duration, knowing how long people are, knowing when people are dropping off from your video is very important to know how engaging your video is and how powerful your content is. If people are dropping off 30% of the video, you need to recognize, you need to look into what exactly happened around 30%. Is it a dull lull, or is there something you could have beefed up to keep people interested in your video? So ultimately, view duration can really show how engaged people are with your video. Engagements, so seeing if people are commenting, like people are commenting on the Liquid live stream, liking or sharing your posts ultimately shows how powerful the posts or how powerful the video can really be, especially on social and on YouTube and platforms like that. Click-through, you may know this, you probably know this metric from display. Whereas display lives and dies by click-through, video is very powerful where their clicks, if people are clicking from your video going straight to your website, they're going to be very engaged. When people are clicking from a banner, you're being pulled from a third-party site, like I could be on ESPN and I see your banner ad there, and it's like, oh, I'm kind of interested. I'm being pulled from somewhere external, and I'm not going to be quite in the mood around your brand. When I'm actively being engaged from a video and I say, hey, I'm going to click on this link, I'm going to go investigate this brand, you are really engaged, you've brought in really valuable users into your website compared to something like display. So analytics is very powerful and very useful, and I've mostly gone around for examining organic content, but it is also very important to measure the success of your paid content. So I'm going to hand it off to Jason, who's going to go a little bit into paid distribution.
So the most important thing before I dive into paid distribution and what it is, we need to understand from a distribution standpoint what the different types of content are. You see them in front of you. It's owned, earned, and paid content. Owned content is what Sean was just talking about. You create a video and you have it hosted and posted and shared in the things that you own. Your website, your social channels, videos that you have in the blog that you actively write for and share videos. Sorry. Not a problem, kind of cool. We got a presentationception going on here. Great stuff. So one of the takeaways from own content is it's something that you completely control, but obviously it's just operating in your own ecosystems. So the reach for your own content is minimal. You post it, and you're at the mercy of the algorithms of social networks, right? How far that can reach. Earned content is kind of twofold. Traditionally speaking, you would view earned content or media as news coverage. Publishers, editorial companies giving you coverage for being newsworthy. The other side of that is your PR teams earning you news coverage through those tactics. But there's a smaller kind of version of earned content that's not necessarily associated with it. And that's if you think about someone writing a review of something that you do on a Yelp or a social review, that's earned content. It's out of your hands. You don't control it. It's someone saying something about you. Another small version of earned content is, let's say you did post a video and it reached someone that didn't necessarily follow a Facebook page, and then it was shared. You have now earned that exposure from someone who wasn't necessarily a fan of yours. We all want to get earn content. It's incredibly important. However, it's not something you control. When you move into paid content, this gives you the most control that you possibly can have. You are taking your own content or your earned content, if it was news coverage, and you are saying, hey, I'm going to construct campaigns to distribute this content to my target audiences and extend the reach. As far as paid content distribution is concerned, there's one form of advertising right now that dominates it. And you may not know the name of it, but you've seen it every day. And that type of advertising is native advertising. So native advertising is strictly what we call pay to play. And you need native and you need to pay for it to distribute your content properly. We are gone from the days, as Sean alluded to, is you posting something on Facebook and it reaching 50% of your audience. It reaches 1 to 5%. So to actually get the exposure you need, you have to put dollars behind this and set your audiences through various forms of native advertising. So native advertising, there's 4 key things about it. Number 1 is it's visually integrated. What that means is historically on the web, and anyone who has browsed the internet in the late 90s or the early 2000s would see display advertising. It would blink at you. It would try and draw your attention away from the content that you were reading so you could focus on an advertiser's message. Native content is the opposite. The sponsored posts you see on Facebook, the ads that are labeled on YouTube, stuff that is brought to you by AT&T or something on a news site you watch looks exactly like the feeds you're consuming content in. It's saying, hey, don't break this user's experience. Just give them this relevant content that happened to be paid for. It's mobile friendly. Facebook gave rise to native content because it's mobile friendly. The user experience of Facebook on mobile was largely the same as desktop. So instead of distracting you on mobile, I'm sure everyone's accidentally tapped on a display out on mobile or your screen froze up because it was trying to load an interstitial on some site. Facebook said, hey, this native thing really works because our user experience is the same across these devices. Let's show advertising this way. It's content friendly, as I alluded to, because it is content. It's promoting content. You're reading other content, and now here's more content that's relevant to you. Just because a brand paid for it doesn't mean it's not important to you. And it's scalable. So display advertising is scalable, as we know. We could reach the entire nation and put millions of dollars into it, or we can reach very small geographies and a small amount of people. As native has evolved, it's the same thing. You want to reach the United States with your content? Fine, you can do it. If you want to reach a 10-mile radius around the location that you have, you can do it. So as pay-to-play rose and native became so content-friendly, what brands started to do was the line between advertising and content blurred. It meshed together. Content became advertising. You couldn't necessarily discern the difference anymore when you were consuming it. So the following video I'm going to show you is an incredible example of this, and native advertising was used on a massive scale to distribute this. So first and foremost, rest in peace, Internet Explorer. Video is a little dated, but the point I wanted to make is these lines got blurred. You didn't know until the last 3 seconds of that video that you were watching a video from Microsoft's Internet Explorer trying to deliver you a brand message. You could have thought this was anyone that just created a very cool, nostalgic trip to the 90s. And that is what paid content distribution is. So let's dive into a few of the channels that you've ultimately been exposed to this native advertising and talk a little bit about the functionality. So first, YouTube. Sean talked about it a little bit. You have 3 very distinct types of native advertising on YouTube: search discovery, pre-roll, and video page discovery. When you're setting up these campaigns, YouTube is a closed ad exchange. They have their own platform. You are building a campaign based around data. You're setting demographic data. You're setting geographical data. You can target people based on topics or their interests. You want to show your video to anyone who might be interested in automotive? You can do that. You set all the parameters, and then they are shown in these ways. Search discovery, you are leveraging the power of the organic search results, just like you would on Google and paid search that YouTube shows you. And you position your ads relevant to that search term. So hopefully that user who was searching for organic content now finds yours that you put dollars behind. YouTube pre-roll, we consider it native even though it functions more like a television commercial because it is within the video player. And YouTube gives you options. Let's say you do have a 30-second television spot that would work well on YouTube. You can use YouTube pre-roll. It's purchased on a cost per view basis. You don't read if someone skips the ad. We skip a lot of ads, but you're giving the user the choice to opt in and engage in your content, have a call to action at the end. The video page discovery functions similar to the search discovery. You are using all the targeting I highlighted, and you're trying to have that video on the right sidebar. It always recommends organic videos for you to watch next. With your ad dollars, you can put your videos, your content in that right sidebar as a suggestion to watch next. It's just always labeled that it's an ad, so there's transparency. On social, you see this every single day, most extensively on Facebook. The sponsored Facebook post is what has made native massively successful. And you can do this in multiple ways. You can have text ads that drive through to landing pages or blog posts with video, or you can upload video right to these ads. Facebook, as well, is a closed ad exchange. It's their platform. And when you are setting all of these campaign parameters, you are leveraging their very powerful first-party data to determine demographics, interests, behaviors, and you can choose what you want to do with it depending on your campaign goals. Like I said, you can have a video that autoplays with a call to action, or you can have a text-based ad that tries to drive someone somewhere. On Instagram and LinkedIn, it functions very similarly. Instagram, as Sean alluded to, you're going to be wanting to use shorter form content, 10, 15-second snippets that play well with kind of the demographics of that audience. On LinkedIn, it's a very powerful tool for business-to-business operations. It's where you can demonstrate a lot of subject matter expertise in your content and try and connect with businesses that way. It's still a social network where the organic algorithm crushes you, and you need to use dollars to get this content in front of the professional eyeballs that it should be in front of. The last type of native we're going to talk about is publisher native. So publisher native is all of the news sites that you read. Your CNN.coms, your BuzzFeed is up there, Huffington Post, Fox News, even your sports sites like your ESPN. So where native differs a little bit as far as the social networks and YouTube is, this is not a closed ad exchange. If you are familiar with display advertising, and I'm not going to go too far, it's a rabbit hole we could really dive down. The platforms and the technology that power this is you are buying audiences by using your own data or retargeting, as well as third-party data that's integrated into these platforms. And I say you're buying audiences because the sites that the native ads are placed on, just like with display, it's thousands of them. It's all determined by behavior. If the segments that you create match up with users going to these sites, they can be shown your advertising. So it works a little different than closed ad exchanges like your social channels or YouTube. So the way it works here, you can see BuzzFeed is kind of, they've really made it a thing. There's 3 native ads on their homepage alone. AT&T, Ford, can't really tell what that one's at the top. But the purpose of this is to drive people to your content, specifically your video content, and try and get them to convert from this. It works because as you're reading news, one of the most annoying things historically was to be taken out of the news and the content you were reading. This doesn't do that. This should be relevant to you if the campaign is executed the right way. So you can leverage the fundamentals of native on YouTube, on your social networks, and on publishing sites that you're reading. And the other thing that's important with this is, like any other marketing campaign that you're executing, this is measurable via analytics. Both the video-specific analytics that Sean was talking about, but all the other analytics, your Google analytics. This is an advertising campaign. These are ad units that can be tagged and tracked through to how much time people spend with the content that they click through to. If they get to your site, what they're doing there. It allows you to attribute these ad placements and the success of these ad placements through the power of analytics. There's no gaps here just because this advertising is a little different than some of the traditional digital advertising you're used to. It's all trackable and it's all adjustable. So we went through a lot today, so I hope everyone doesn't feel overwhelmed. There was a lot. To be honest with you, we left a lot on the cutting room floor. I think a lot of us felt like movie directors sad that we weren't going to get to talk about some of our content. And if you want us to go more in depth on anything, feel free to ask it in the open QA that is coming up after this. Talk to us afterward. It's fine. We can go more in depth on this stuff. But to conclude, I wanted to make one last point. At the beginning of the presentation, I asked you to keep thinking about those 4 statistics I highlighted as we went through this. And I hope you were able to take small takeaways from each section we went through. The big thing I want you to understand those 4 statistics highlighted is video is how end users want to be marketed to. It's a fact, and all the stats prove that. So if you are not marketing to people in the way they want to be marketed to, I think you're going to find it very hard to be consistently effective and successful. Marketing strategy is being driven by content marketing right now, and content marketing is being driven by video. So it's something that at this point you don't really have a choice to do or not to do. We're not at that point anymore. And I know that it's daunting. Creating video strategy, creating video content, executing it the right way is incredibly daunting. It takes upfront investment. It takes very sound strategy development. And I think most importantly, it takes accepting the fact that you have to put dollars behind the content to reach the amount of people you need to make the investment worthwhile. It didn't used to be that way. It is that way now. And ultimately, if you do execute your video marketing properly, the return on investment is immense. And it's absolutely the most powerful marketing tool that you can have in your arsenal. So, as always, if you're just looking to get started or you already have something established and you just need help to evolve it or take it to the next level, everyone at Liquid is here to help. Thank you.